Good evening, everyone, and welcome to episode 10 of Cocktails with Conductors, brought to you by the Richmond Philharmonic in Richmond, Virginia. My name is Peter Wilson. I am the music director of Richmond Philharmonic, and I'm here with my co-host, the amazing assistant conductor of the Richmond Philharmonic. Hello, Will Patty.
Hey, what's going on, Peter? Hi, it's so good to see you again. Hello, everybody. Awesome to be here again. Really excited to speak tonight and drink as well. But I'd like to take a quick moment to thank some of our longtime supporters as we start every episode here. We want to thank the Virginia Museum of History and Culture for several years of support to the Richmond Philharmonic, the Virginia Department of Veterans Services for several years, Town Bank for 15 years of support, and Vogue Flowers for over 30 years of support to the Richmond Philharmonic. You can visit www.richmondphilharmonic.org to donate or make a donation and to help keep music alive in RVA. And thank you and hello to everyone joining us on Twitch. I think I know what that is. And YouTube. I definitely know what that is.
Awesome. Thank you, Will. It's hard to believe that we've already had 9 episodes here. For those of you who may be joining us for the first time, this is something that we started back in the fall as part of a pandemic initiative for the Richmond Philharmonic, mainly as a way for us to gather on Monday nights when we normally would rehearse. So, and then we just thought maybe the rest of the community might be interested in some of the things we were discussing. So we've had different guest artists on, lots of different conductors, and we're now getting into having composers and performers from orchestras and things like that, and just talking about all of these various things. So we meet every other Monday night at 7 p.m. Eastern time, and this episode 10 is in honor of Women's History Month. Today is the first day of Women's History Month, and we are very excited to be celebrating women composers. And so I am so thrilled because tonight we have a very, very, very special guest. This is a dear friend of mine that is friend of the Richmond Philharmonic, in fact, because we performed her violin concerto. We did the world premiere of her violin concerto, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. That was back in 2017. But she is an award-winning professor of music at MIT. She's been a Guggenheim Fellow. She was also a fellow at Harvard's Radcliffe Institute and composer in residence with the Boston Modern Orchestra Project. An all-around amazing person. Would you please join me in welcoming Dr. Elena Ruehr? Hello, Elena.
Hi there, Peter and Will. Nice to see you guys.
Hey. It's great to see you. How are you doing? Is there any snow up there in Boston?
There's a little bit left over. It's kind of been a rainy, dreary day, so it's kind of turning into ice.
Okay. Well, as we always do here with Cocktails with Conductors, we're going to kick things off here with the cocktail. And I understand you have brought a very special cocktail, a version of the Mule. Would you please tell us what drink you're making and teach us how to make this?
Well, I'm going to be perfectly honest with you guys. I don't actually I don't usually mix drinks. I get them. My husband or my daughter, I have a 25-year-old daughter. They mix the drinks and they put them in my hand and they go, "Oh, that's good." And so this is I think this is the official title is Glasgow Mule. Am I right? Or is it Scottish? No, is it Scottish or Glasgow?
I think we're making the Glasgow Mule.
We're making this Glasgow.
But you normally drink the Scottish Mule, as I understand it, or maybe an Irish Mule?
Yeah, it comes and goes. It depends on the day, it comes and goes. But this one has elderflower liqueur in it. So that's kind of something I'm really interested in. And I think it's a beautiful liqueur. And should I make it right now? I have to look at I have a little recipe here. I have to watch it because, as I said, I don't usually do it. And the thing it says is 2 ounces of Scotch whiskey. Okay. And I've got this gigantic bottle of Johnny Walker Black because it's my husband's favorite, come home from work and have a little Scotch kind of drink.
Really big bottle of Scotch.
It's a really big bottle of Scotch. And He also likes cigars, and so he has a little scotch and a cigar. And he goes in our hot tub. It's pretty sweet.
Hey, Elena, I don't want to interrupt you anymore. I just wanted to say that Dave Davis says, "Hi, Elena. Thanks for joining the RPO again."
Hi, that's so nice to see you. I wish I could see you, but I'm waving.
Thanks.
Is this too? Oh, yeah.
Oh, he's our president.
Oh.
And a trombone player with the orchestra. Don't hold that against him.
Oh no, I love those trombone players. They're the coolest. I think this is 2 ounces, isn't it? Or is it 1? I don't want to make it too strong.
Yeah, it depends.
It's a shot glass. Oh.
That's a good question. I'm not sure. I would imagine that's probably.
I think it's.
Last I think I remember a shot glass was 1.5 ounces. I'm not.
Oh,
entirely
so I have to
sure.
add a little splash more when I put my shot in. And this is the ice. So you put the ice in the glass. So I'm doing it now. So I'm waiting for you guys.
Mhm.
And then you add your scotch,
I'm using
whatever kind you've
blended.
got.
I don't have any blended scotch, so I'm just going to go with the single malt stuff here.
And I'm going to make it just a little bit stronger because that's what you said. And
Uh-huh.
then we add in half a shot of lime juice. And I don't use squeezed limes. I just get this incredible organic lime juice,
Nice.
which I just buy at the
Looks great.
store.
Yes.
And I like this stuff. It's really good. I put it in with bubbly water all the time. It's really nice. So a little lime juice that brightens it up. And then we go, I think we're going to put in the elderflower, 1/2 ounce. So, measure it out a little bit. I don't have a thing, but it's probably about that much.
Right.
1/2 ounce of elderflower, a dash of bitters, and I really like bitters. I think they kind of add a little edge to things. So I'm going to just shake it a couple of times. If I can open it, oh my gosh, it's stuck. I might
do
just
that to you.
pretend. I might just pretend because I can't open it. Ding, ding,
It's
ding, ding, ding.
just a dash of bitters.
Yeah, just a dash. A couple of shakes, I think. And then you top it off with just a little ginger beer. Now it says 4 ounces of ginger beer, but I'm going to put in a little less than that because I like it a little less sweet. So I'm just going to measure it out here and put in 2 shots of ginger beer. And that's your drink. And then what you do is you don't shake it. And you're supposed to use a copper mug, which I think Peter has a copper mug, but I don't have one. So I had to use just a plain old glass. Or you can use a Tom Collins glass. And then you stir it.
I have a very special copper mule mug here in honor of you, Elena, because it's from Skywalker Ranch, where most of your string quartets were recorded, as I understand it, by the Cyprus Quartet.
Yes.
Are we ready, Will?
I need to be really careful about squeezing limes around my Mac. It's just crazy. I'm getting juice all over the place.
Dude,
I'm trying to get my bitters open.
For the show. You got to have your limes for the show.
I'm a real rookie on that one. I'm getting my scotch ready right now, and I'll be ready in just a second, y'all.
Okay.
I can't believe it's taking me so long. I was studying Elena's moves just to make sure I was doing it right, and then cool. Here we go. All right.
I'm going to stir it.
Ice as well. Oh yeah, and I don't have a stirrer, so I'm going to do the official round around shake a little bit, then add my ice. Oh boy, this is exciting. It smells already like it's going to be amazing.
You ready?
All right, have you guys added your ginger beer already?
Yep.
Oh my gosh.
We're ready to do the toast here.
Now I'm ready.
All right.
Here's to Women's History Month and our special guest,
Fantastic.
Elena Ruehr.
Thank you.
Cheers. Cheers.
Oh, that's lovely.
Wow.
Holy cow, that's lovely.
Can't believe I'm drinking scotch.
Oh, another trombone player. What is it with the trombone players? We got Will is a trombone player. Dave Davis is a trombone player. Now John Carroll is coming on, confirming that a shot glass is indeed 1.5 ounces. Holy
And
wow.
Dave is
that's-
having an Irish mule with us.
We opened our third episode back in the fall with a Moscow mule that I added cucumbers in, and we ended up renaming that the Maestro Mule. But this is lovely. Oh my gosh, thank you, Elena. Okay, so let's get down to it here. I want you to tell us about your background, your musical background, growing up, and then what inspired you to choose composing? Because that's actually somewhat rare, I think, among musicians to choose composition as your life pursuit.
Yeah, that would be my mom and my dad. My dad was he was an amateur jazz, big band jazz piano player. He put himself through college playing in dance bands. And he played every night after dinner. He would play the piano and my mother would sing. And my mom was like a folk singer, but she would sing these old standards like Gershwin and all that stuff. And it was every night. And so I heard them every night playing these songs. And I started goofing around on the piano because we had a piano, which was a great thing. And I was 3 or 4 years old, and I was like saying, "Mommy, what's this? This is called Sunshine." I wrote a little song called Sunshine, and she helped me write it down. And then I said, "I want to learn how to play the piano." And she said, "Okay, I'll teach you." And so I started taking lessons with my mom, and she was a folk singer, and she didn't know that in classical music, you don't compose at the same time that you're learning to play. Like, she just assumed that everybody composes just like when you're learning to write, you learn how to write your own stories. Wow. She assumed that you write your own songs. So I just started writing songs that imitated the stuff that I was learning on the piano, really little. And, and I never stopped. So that's kind of how that happened.
Wow. That really is unique. So did you ever take formal piano lessons, or was this just all, okay.
Yeah, by the time I was 12, I was taking formal piano lessons. And I can tell you another story. You want to hear another story?
Yes.
All right. So you asked me about the inspiration or something. And I was 4 or 5 years old. And my dad had these reel-to-reel tapes, okay? And he had this kit that he built at home of a reel-to-reel tape player. And it came with a free set of reel-to-reel recordings of the Beethoven and Bartók string quartets. And each movement was a whole reel, right?
Wow.
So they got all mixed up in his pile. So the Beethoven and the Bartók were all confused. And my dad used to listen to them all the time because they were the only reel-to-reel tapes he had. So I was allowed to go and sit in his study while he was listening to music and doing his math. He's a professional mathematician, and he was doing his math. And I was allowed to go and sit in there and color if I wanted, but I had to be really quiet. So years went by, and I was listening to Beethoven and Bartók. And finally, I might have been about 7. I said, "Papa, what is this?" And he says, he's working away, and he goes, "Bella Bartók." And I go, "Bella? Oh, she's a girl. I could be like her when I grow up, you know."
Oh,
and I totally believe that all the Beethoven and Bartók string quartets were written by a woman named Bella.
Whoa.
And by the time when I finally started taking formal lessons and I was 12 years old, I went to my piano teacher and she gave me some Bartók to play. And I said, "Oh, I love her. She's such a great composer." And she said, "It's not a girl, it's a guy." And I went, "No, you're wrong."
No.
And I got
dramatic.
really mad. I got really mad and I stomped home from my lesson and I told my parents how crazy this piano teacher was. And they said, she's right.
Yeah. That's our bad. Were they the microcosmos?
No, it was a little piece called Dawn, which is probably, is that from Microcosmos? I can't remember, but there's some pieces, easier pieces for piano. It might be Microcosmos. Yeah. It might be, yeah.
Yeah, some of them are very, very easy. Yeah.
Yeah. So
you did your undergrad at Michigan, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that was in composition.
Yes.
and then Juilliard, you did your master's. Where did you do your doctorate?
I started at Juilliard, and my teacher, Vincent Persichetti, who was this amazing man. I loved him, but he died not while I was there, but during the time that I was studying with him. So I transferred back to Michigan to finish my doctorate because I was brokenhearted.
Yeah.
So I got my doctorate from Michigan.
Wow. Persichetti, though. Holy cow. That's amazing. Wow. So, what during your journey in writing? I mean, after you went through all of this study, I would imagine you were kind of writing along the way anyway. But who obviously you were inspired by Ms. Bela Bartok. But actually, it's funny because as soon as you said that, I actually learned one of the pieces I used to learn with my brother were the Leclerc duets for violin, 2 violins. We played them all the time because they're somewhat simple, and so we could learn them. We played them in church and things like that. And I thought for sure that this was a woman because it was Jean Marie.
Oh, of course.
Yep.
Yeah.
Jean Marie Leclerc. I didn't even ask anybody, kind of like you, just like I just assumed that it was a woman. So I thought, this is so cool. We're playing these duets written by this woman. So, hey, I was a little ahead of my time too about, the whole, diversity thing there. Okay. No, but when you I'm wanting to know who inspired you. Obviously Persichetti, but among other composers and perhaps even artists, who has inspired you when you've been writing, and if any are women, that would be very interesting as well. Actual women.
Yeah, real women. Yeah, I know. Well, changed over the years. When I was younger, I was playing piano and I was playing Chopin and Gershwin, and I was playing Bach and Bartok and that kind of stuff. And of course, Bartok was a huge influence, and Beethoven through this weird connection. But as I got older, I didn't have any women composers in my music history classes as an undergrad.
Wow.
But eventually I came across, going through time, I started doing research and finding them. And Hildegard is the first one in history that we know. And I remember hearing Hildegard and going, wow, this is Gregorian chant, but it's got this huge range and these kind of florid lines. I was really inspired by that. I think it's the second movement of my 3rd string quartet. It's called the Abbey. And it's really inspired by those Hildegard pieces that I've heard. And, I don't know. And it goes on from there, and other women composers I love. I have a kind of fondness for Ruth, another string quartet. I think it's 1931. Very modernist and kind of cranky and craggy. But it's like, if you want to listen to really good modernism, she really nails it. And it's
it cut out for
Ruth Crawford. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yeah, Ruth Crawford.
Ruth Crawford's, she was the mother of a famous folk singer named Pete Seeger, who you might have heard of.
Yeah.
I
didn't know the connection to Pete Seeger. Wow. Huh.
What?
And she had another.
That blows my mind.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I'm ready. Mind blown.
So
that's amazing.
well, there's that here. It's not about me. It's about her. But so let's see. How does this go? Ruth Crawford married Charles Seeger, and she adopted some of his kids, and they had some kids of their own. And then the Depression came, and Charles lost his job. He was a musician teaching at Juilliard, and there was some trouble and he lost his job. And so he ended up working for the WPA. And he was picking beans, you know, but he started listening to the music that people were singing while they were picking beans. And he said, this is really interesting. Let's record it.
Whoa.
Recordings and send them to Ruth Crawford, who would write them down. And then Pete was sitting there listening and picked up all these folk songs. And that's kind of where that happened.
Wow.
What?
You're blowing
Pete,
Will's mind. That we need to be, we're drinking to that.
Cheersing. Pete Seeger is such a huge part of my music education world and folk song world. And if you would ask me where Pete Seeger got his musical influences from, I had a blank slate, no idea. That's an incredible connection for me. That's very cool.
That is cool. So do you also, okay, so you write a good bit of chamber music. You've written works for orchestra. We know about the several concertos, of course, and opera. You've really gotten into opera. Is there anything that, are you sort of just open-minded to all of it, or is there some specific kind of genre that you're drawn to?
Well, I have written 8 string quartets. So that's a big, I mean, I'm sure it comes from those recordings that my dad played when I was a kid, you know. And so string quartets are sort of my base, you know. But I write anything that somebody asks me to do, as long as it sounds like a cool project, you know. And I like opera. Lately, I'm working on my 5th opera now, and I like you know, when you write an opera, you get the script. I don't write my, you know, you get the libretto, and you have to decide. It's as if you're the director and the actor at the same time. How the lines are said, what's the important and you know, all that stuff is your job, and that's pretty fascinating. So I but concertos for the same reason, because you know, you have an orchestra that's sort of the how do we say it? It's as if it's the mood or the you know, it's all the stuff that a director would do, the lighting, the mood, the angle, the inflection, and then the soloist is the actor, you know, and that's there's something about that I really like.
Wow.
That's a good segue. Let's segue into the experience of the violin concerto you wrote for Irina Mureșanu, another dear friend of ours. So talk about that experience. You know, what inspired that? I want to say that you had this sort of on the docket with her for a while, but it was kind of on a back burner, and then we sort of had a conversation that kind of kickstarted it again. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah. Irina has always been a good friend of mine, and I'll just tell you a silly story, which is that she was at the premiere of my 3rd string quartet, and she had played a big piece, and we met there. And then like 5 years later, I was walking down the street with my dog, and I see this lady with a dog. And of course, I noticed the dog because I love dogs. And I was like, oh, what a cute dog. And we were talking, and finally, you, Elena? And I went, oh, Irina. So anyway, after that, we hooked up and we became really good friends. And I wrote her a couple of sonatas, and she and I were like, I want to write you a concerto. She wants to play a concerto of mine. We just needed an orchestra. And honestly, it was you, Peter, who inspired us to kind of make the plunge and do it. So thank you. That was wonderful. Yeah, that was such a fun experience. Yeah.
I was, of course, introduced to your music through the string quartets, and just absolutely fell in love with them. I just find your writing so accessible. It's so new and fresh. I mean, you have a unique voice that I love, and I remember hearing your piano concerto in Boston and just going nuts. I just remember being it just blew my mind. I mean, it was just such a great, I mean, the whole audience was just went crazy for it too. I'm trying to remember what that orchestra was that played that. It was like a chamber orchestra at that church. I'm trying to remember. I think maybe, did they all play standing up or?
It was a Far Cry.
A Far Cry, that's right. They were fabulous. But yeah, I mean, when I heard that, you know, you and Irina were game for doing this with Richmond, I was tickled. So I guess at this point, what is your process then, as you're approaching? I mean, I know how you spoke to me about, hey, what instrumentation is there in the orchestra? What do you think this should be? That kind of thing. But I mean, you're a master of all of this, and so you would know in terms of, you know, if it's a trumpet concerto, you're saying to yourself, okay, I can probably put more volume in, right? You know, instruments that might project. I mean, a violin projects pretty well. So, like, you know, how did you go about crafting that particular concerto?
Well, it's really about the soloist when you write a concerto, and I've only written concertos for specific players, you know, and so you write for the person that's going to play it. And Irina is she's beautiful, and she wears sparkly gowns, and she's flashy, and I wanted to give her something kind of flashy to play. And I knew that she would, but she's also can play beautiful lyrical lines and all that stuff. But I wanted to start out with her virtuosity. So it's, you know, I just started with a kind of fast movement that has a lot of scales in it. And, you know, and she plays up and down that. And then the second movement is a lyrical piece that shows off her sound and beauty, and sort of, she's a very, very playful, fun person. So it's very much about that person and my relationship with that person, and you know, and also trying to make them shine and stuff like that.
How does that relate to going back then to like quartets? Do you write for the quartet, like the players in the quartet? Do you actually make that distinction when you're writing a string quartet, or are you kind of, you know, writing just however something is inspired by you?
It sort of depends on, you know, sometimes I get commissions. So the Cyprus Quartet played my third quartet, which was not actually a commission, but it was premiered by the Borneo. And but I wrote that without a commission. It was a very personal piece that I wrote just in my head. My fourth quartet was commissioned by the Cyprus, but I didn't know them that well, so I just wrote this other abstract piece. But my fifth and sixth quartets were commissioned by the Cyprus, and so I was thinking of them as players. And now I've written a seventh and eighth for the Delgani and the Arneas, who are also friends of mine, and I think of them. But no matter what happens when I'm writing for a string quartet, if it's a viola, it's Ethan. If it's a cello, it's Jennifer. Even if I'm writing for an orchestra, it's Tom, it's Cecily. You know, those are the instruments, because I've written so much music for the Cyprus that, you know, I'm writing for a violin, I'm writing for Cecily or Tom, you know, and it's just this kind of weird thing.
Wow.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, as you were
It's
talking,
amazing.
I was imagining, I mean, do you see the differences? I mean, 8 quartets, that's a lot. Do you see the differences in the personalities of those yourself? Because I mean, to the listener, I would imagine there might be an evolution of style, but I mean, can you hear the personality of each quartet coming through from whoever you were writing for?
To a certain extent, yes.
And
But
so
the first,
what is that like
yeah.
when you have a quartet playing it that you didn't write it for? Because that's the goal of any composer, right? The longevity. You want it to live on and be played by other groups. So how is that experience for you when you're hearing it? Do you suddenly are you reminded of the original quartet, or do you find that the quartet is coming out because of different voices? Does it sound different to you and all of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the inspiration comes from the people, but the piece exists outside of that, you know. And so when a different quartet picks it up, they bring something else to the table, right? It's a different sort of sound, and as long as it sounds good, you know. I respect interpretation a lot. I really appreciate interpretation. I really enjoy different ways of seeing the same thing. I mean, if they're wrong or something like that, I'm like, okay, that's out of tune. You got to fix that.
Right.
If it's basically there and it's sounding the way it should be, I love.
Uh-oh.
You know.
Yep. Oh, hey, I think we just lost a little bit of your last. Hey, Elena, I think we just lost a little bit of your last two sentences.
I just love different interpretations, and I think it makes the music stay alive, right? Because you want it to do that.
Right.
Actually, the way you're speaking is making me rethink all of the concertos that I know of, and rethink like a Sibelius violin concerto, kind of filtered through who was he embodying at that time that he wrote that specific one, and what would anyone have changed? I know Rachmaninoff is kind of unique in that he was basically writing for himself, and so often that is the case. But it's really interesting to hear you talk, a living composer talking about it this way as well. And John Carroll, other trombonist from RPO, says we need to commission a trombone quartet.
It says we need to
from
commission
you.
Elena Ruehr,
Sorry,
a trombone.
Elena Ruehr trombone
Yeah, I'm
quartet.
not sure. Does he mean trombone quartet concerto with orchestra? Wow.
I want to write a trombone quartet concerto, but I do have a trombone concerto. It's very old.
Whoa, hold on. I mean, all you need,
First
I would
year
bring
of graduate school.
a trombone quartet. A trombone quartet concerto would bring new meaning to the term gross concerto. And second, if you were going to write a concerto, all you need to know is that John Carroll is incredible at trombone and he can play anything.
There you go. There you go.
That's great. I will definitely check out.
It looks like we have another question here. Oh, this is from Jen's mom. We have to do a big shout out, by the way, to Jen Myers, our vice president, who is our guru behind the scenes. She's amazing. She's making all of this happen. We couldn't do it without her. So thank you, Jen. And her mother is a loyal viewer of our video podcast. And she asks, do you think there would be more female composers today if more young women had had the same nurturing and inspiration to believe it was their destiny, just as Dr. Ruehr did?
Well, honestly, anybody, whether you're a girl or a boy or but anybody is going to be inspired by support and inspiration and all that stuff. So but I think that young women, it's less the support and more sometimes the turning off of things, so some young women get turned off of classical music partly because the most famous musicians that are women are pop musicians, and so they tend to go into pop music or songwriting or something like that, and they don't see the female Beethoven or whatever. Like I had Bartok, right? And so they don't think it's something they can do, and it's a very subtle message, but it's there. And then it used to be that teachers would say, oh, you can't do that because you're a girl, but that was a long time ago. They don't do that anymore, but I hope. But that subtle message can sort of get in there, and then you see, whatever, some great Beyonce or whatever doing her thing, and you go, well, I could be like that. You know what I mean? So it changes your trajectory a little bit, I think.
Well, and I would imagine composers are generally speaking behind the scenes too. So it's harder. You're not seeing this projected image. I mean, we see, people like Beethoven on a T-shirt or in a poster or whatever. But generally speaking, composers, particularly modern composers, don't get that sort of superstar status that even classical performers might get, whether male or female, right? So how would
and there's
you?
Also,
No, go ahead.
There's also another thing about classical music, which is it's kind of nerdy, I mean, come on, believe it or not, it's kind of a dirty thing to do when you're in high school, and maybe some girls are sort of turned off because of that. And that's too bad, because it is kind of nerdy, but it's cool nerdy.
Well, we're here to make it cool. We're here.
I mean, nerd culture is now a cool culture, for sure. Yeah. I what you said about pop musicians is actually really resonating with me, and I hadn't actually thought about it through that lens before, and I will definitely be reflecting on that. That's an interesting point.
So can you talk about your compositional process, regardless of what you're writing? And I'm curious to know what, if any, do you think your music falls into in terms of a style? Do you think that do you think about that? Like that, what kind of style you produce, and so what that compositional style is. When do you compose during the day, for example?
Oh, I have a schedule. I compose from 12 to 5 every day, every single day. And I just do. And sometimes I get sort of stuck and I go and look in the fridge or whatever, or walk the dog or do something else. But 12 to 5 is my time to write music, and I do it every single day. And it depends on where I am in the process, but if I'm just starting a piece, I'll listen to the presenter, and like right now I'm writing a piece for a chamber music ensemble, and they want something about equality, justice, and freedom, because that's on everyone's mind right now. And I was like, how do you write a piece about equality, justice, and freedom? And I thought, well, how does it feel if you have? How does it feel to value freedom? And feelings are something that I can work with. And so I try to sit in that feeling, and I improvise at the piano, and I start writing down. I get something and I put it in my computer, and then I play with it around and stuff like that. And it's kind of like doodling, really. And some improvisation and some, knowledge that I have. I don't know where I'm going with this.
Do you deal in, I mean, I sort of feel like you deal in, I'm not sure if she's frozen. I think maybe.
Question? Oh,
I think maybe you. Elena's. Are you, did you come back? Are you back?
Oh, there.
There we are. Okay. Like, do you feel like you deal largely in melodies to start, or are you thinking in a harmonic structure? How does that play, or does it differ depending on the piece you're doing?
Yeah, it changes from piece to piece, but often it's a sound, a single 4 or 5 note sound, which is basically a harmony, and then that harmony becomes a set. And I think of it now, I'm getting nerdy. It becomes a set, which I then transpose and circle around and change and alter, and I try to sort of mine out what are all the possible sounds in that set, and that slowly becomes a kind of structure, and then the melodies sort of emerge from the harmony, and then they influence each other.
Yeah, you remind me of a composer I learned about a few years ago when I was living in Baltimore, from Iceland. I think she's been nominated for a few Grammys. is it Anna Thorsdottir? Her last name is a very long Icelandic last name, but the sound is the most important thing in the orchestral the sonic experience of the specific orchestration informs what happens largely throughout the piece, and sculpting in a way using sound and sonority was just something that was new to me. But yeah, that's amazing. It's a language that you get to play with, and it's incredible.
Have you been,
Yeah,
Elena,
I would say probably. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Well, I would say that I don't know Anna's music, but if she's starting with the sound of the orchestra, I actually don't do that. I start with the sound of the pitches. I'm very pitch oriented. So it's the sound of the G and the E flat and the D and the B flat and how they sound together that inspires me. And then those sounds lead to the orchestra. But I don't start with the orchestra. I start with the actual, those notes and how they sound together. And, you know, it might mean that, you know, that E flat wants to be in a horn because I want it to stand out because I hear it a certain way, you know, but it's so different, but whatever.
No, the absolute pitches, like sounding on a piano, can inform an orchestration, and that is a totally different thing, actually. So I'm glad I asked. I mean, that's really interesting. Thank you.
That's a really interesting answer, Elena, because it says to me that a lot of your music, in theory, could be transcribed. It could be, you know, you could take a string quartet and then orchestrate it into a larger ensemble. If somebody came to you and said, I just love this string quartet and I want to hear it as a symphony, you know, which is that's interesting that you think from that. So I just performed a suite by the Black composer William Grant Still, and the three movements from this suite were inspired by art, these paintings. Each movement was actually a different artist. And so I wondered if you have had that experience before. Have you been inspired by specific art or artists? I mean, aside from obviously a soloist coming to you or, you know, commissioning, that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's a question that was made for me because I'm deeply inspired by visual art, by novels. So the visual art, I have a CD called O'Keeffe Images, which has a cello concerto on it and some orchestra pieces, and features Jennifer Kletzel. I think you guys might know Jennifer, and she's playing the cello concerto. And
that's the Cloud Atlas?
That's called Cloud Atlas, which is inspired by a novel by David Mitchell. So let's stop with, I'll get to it. But O'Keeffe Images is 3 pieces for orchestra that are based on O'Keeffe paintings. And I was first inspired by O'Keeffe's Sky Above Clouds because it had this beautiful, because I saw it in the Chicago Art Institute, and it's this really mind-blowing, huge canvas that looks like the sky above when an airplane. And I just thought it was beautiful, and it inspired me, and I wrote a piece called Sky Above Clouds, and then I wrote 2 more pieces to go with it. So that's a visual inspiration. Cloud Atlas was inspired by a novel by David Mitchell, and David Mitchell is a really great author, and I was kind of like, you know, worshiping David Mitchell, and I to him and I said, I want to write some music based on your book. And he said, well, there's a movie coming out called Cloud Atlas, and I don't want you to feel like it's, you know, getting in the way. And I said, well, I don't think it's going to be a big deal, and I'll write the piece and I won't have it attached to the movie. And he was like, that's cool. And then I wrote the piece and I made the recording with Jennifer, and then we sent it off to David Mitchell, and he wrote me back a postcard and said how much he liked it. And I've got the postcard on my fridge. Wow. And I look at it, you know, whenever I'm feeling kind of like, oh, nobody cares. It's
one of your
cool.
heroes. That's fantastic.
But yeah.
We have,
and also a lot of my Yeah, go
No, you
ahead.
please go ahead.
I mean, I've written a lot of songs that are based on poems, so I have poetry that's interesting to me too. But
Oh.
go ahead, ask.
Oh, I was going to say we have a few questions that are coming in from some of our listeners. And one of them asks from Dave Shiflett asks, how can new composers get conductors and quartets and ensembles to listen to their music, especially if you don't have a traditional music school connection?
Oh boy. What? Who was it I just saw on a video? You're effed. It's really hard. It's a very hard thing to do. My experience is that it's all personal. You know, you meet somebody, you say hi, you become friends, like Irina and I, right? I mean, and it was nice because we met over our dogs. It wasn't like I was trying to get something from her and she wasn't trying to get something from me. And and become friends and you say, hey, would you like to try to do this? You know? And so if this is somebody who doesn't have a composer, who doesn't connection, the best thing to do is to find players, a single player that you are friends with, and say, can I write you a piece? And usually people are honored to have a piece written for them. And then maybe they have a friend and you say, can I write a piece for you in piano? And then it just blossoms. But I've been doing this I've been composing for 50 years, right? And it just takes so much time. And it's a lot of sloggy hard work.
Well, you're reminding me of. Uh-oh, did we lose her?
Answer in a nutshell, but it's just not that easy. Did you lose me?
You're back. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So you're reminding me of the when you wrote the duo for Aaron and me, and it was something where I think I had asked you many years ago, and we kind of were joking over dinner or whatever. Oh, it'd be really great if you could write a piece for us. And you were like, haha, yeah, that would be great. You know, and it's kind of just one of those things that was just kind of floating out there. And then one day you were in the middle of writing your opera, a couple of years later, one of your operas, and you said you just all of a sudden had this inspiration for a piece for violin and double bass, and you stopped the opera and went over here and wrote this piece for us. It's just, you know, the next thing I know, I had this piece in my inbox called Groovy Doovy.
Whoa.
Which was amazing. I mean, I can't even, it was just mind blowing.
Oh, well, then you played it so amazingly with Aaron. It was so good.
We were so inspired by you, and I thank you for doing that. That was just, it was pretty awesome. Do we have any other questions, Dave?
Yeah. Well, Dave asked a question. Yeah. Our president, Dave, asked that, Elena, you mentioned that you write for the performer. Do you also write with an audience, with the audience feeling or the audience experience in mind?
I do that very, very much so. I really do. Are you listening? Can you hear me? Yeah, okay. So I actually have a very strong philosophy about writing for the audience. And it comes from my combination of backgrounds between my mother, who's my dad, who's this jazz player. They were doing stuff that was very, very accessible. And when I went to school and studied music, I was given all this really heavy duty, complicated music. And I said, I don't think my mom would like that, you know? Mm-hmm. And I said, how can I write music that's got that kind of integrity and solid construction and still appeal to people? And it's been my lifelong endeavor to try to figure that out. So I always feel like I'm walking this kind of, you know, I mean, in terms of feelings of the audience, I'm very interested in expressing emotion, number one, in what I do. But then also this sort of knife edge of complexity and simplicity and making it sort of available and referring to cultural norms, but also kind of pushing the edge. And that's something that's really where I spend most of my hard work, is thinking about how to kind of walk that line and, maybe gently guide somebody a little bit away from where they might want to go, but still have them be happy to be where they are. And it's, sometimes I fail. And sometimes I fail too simple. Sometimes I fail too complex, but it's something I think about a great deal.
Yeah. What a beautiful answer.
Great.
That's
So
amazing.
tell us what, like, two questions. I want to hear about what you've mentioned, one project that you're working on now. What other projects are you working on, and how did you get, we always ask our guests, how did you get yourself through the pandemic?
Oh, all right. The project I'm now is a sextet for string quartet, bass, and piano for Cleveland Chamber Music, City Chamber Music of Cleveland, which is a really great group. And it's a commission, and they'll do it in January. I'm also writing a set of my friend Stephen Salters, which we're going to record in May. And I'm working on an opera. Start that in June or July. And the opera is about this kind of crazy sci-fi story about Ada Lovelace and Charles Babbage, who are, Ada Lovelace was one of the first inventors of the computer in a very simplistic, that's a simple way of saying it. So I'm doing all that. What was the second part of your question?
Oh, just what got you through the pandemic?
Oh, what got me through the pandemic? I'm going to be, this is going to sound like I'm a cheerleader, but a couple of things. The first thing was my daughter, Sophie, was with us because she was not yet, she's in Berkeley grad school now, but she was with us in March, and she stayed with us until August. And she's a singer-songwriter, and she was writing these beautiful songs and making recordings, and it was very, very uplifting to have her around. And she'd make me Moscow mules and Scottish mules and Glasgow mules and all this stuff, and it was fun. And she likes to cook homemade pasta, and food is like huge. I've been cooking like crazy, and so that's all good. But the other thing is that I have found that I have written more music this year than I have in any year of my life. Wow. I can't even list all the things. I wrote another piano concerto. I wrote an orchestra piece. I wrote some songs. I wrote this. I wrote that. I've written another string quartet. I've written all these things because I have nothing else to do, and usually I'd be traveling or, I'd be distracted with concerts and stuff. I'm just composing 5 hours a day, every day. And it just happens, it's weird.
Wow.
But I do get bored, and I'm so wanting to travel. And I'm actually here. Wait, here's a shout out. Oh no, I don't have it here. I'm writing, and they're based on Richard Blanco's poem. And
wait.
Laureate Obama's second term.
Wait.
Am I losing?
We lost most of that. Start at the beginning of what you're writing or what the ensemble was. That we missed that part.
Well, I'm writing a set of songs for Stephen Salters, and I'm using poetry by a poet named Richard Blanco, and he was Obama's second inaugural poet, and he's wonderful. Yeah. Wonderful poet, beautiful guy, Cuban, in his ancestry. And he has all these poems about traveling through Europe that are very lovely and extremely evocative of being in Venice, in Paris, being in, different parts of Italy. And so I chose 4 from these different travel songs in Venice, when I feel like I'm in. I so want to I'm so tired of being in my house.
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah,
so I think we have
I feel
time
the
for,
same.
this is great. I thank you so much for being here, Elena. We have just one more question comes to mind, and that is that you aren't just a full-time composer, you're also a professor at MIT. You've got students in composition. How is that going? I mean, I know that you're obviously probably have been doing this online, but how do you approach teaching composition to students, and how, are you, hardcore, classic, you have to learn certain rules, or do you get them thinking outside the norms and that sort of thing? How is your approach with students?
It depends on the class. I teach one class that is the kids that they have to read music. That's the only requirement. And when they're finished, they have to write a string quartet in the style of Mozart. Okay. And they're MIT students. They're real bright. They pick it up real quick. And they do write these pieces that, yeah, maybe they're Salieri, but they're pretty good. There's these little string quartets that they write. And so that's very rule based, because if you want to sound like that composer, you have to sort of follow the rules. But I teach other classes that are more free, and then I'm like, whatever is fine. And even if it's going to be sort of pop music, or fiddle music, or whatever it is that the kids want to do, I'm happy to help teach that. Although I don't know every style really well, so if they want to do R&B, I can give them some pointers, but I can't really tell them what an R&B artist would do. But I do my best.
Hmm.
Right. Wow, this has been so great. It's so great to see you, Elena. Thank you so much. Thank you for the new cocktail as well. And my goodness, we can't thank you enough. We hope our audience enjoyed this as much as we did. Let's see. Will, do you want to take us out with maybe some links and another
Absolutely.
shout out to our
Sure. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Elena. You are so easy to talk to. You are so wonderful and gracious with your time. And this beverage, the thing about mules is they go down real easy. Oh boy. So I'll get through this as best I can. We would like to take a moment again to thank the Virginia Museum of History and Culture, the Virginia Department of Veteran Services, Town Bank, and Vogue Flowers for their support over the years. Thank you to Jen Myers as well, who is making all this happen on the technical side. You are amazing. And thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. It's a real pleasure to be here.
We'll see you in 2 weeks for episode 11. It's going to be a Celtic celebration.
See y'all.
Bye-bye.
Bye.